Hello and welcome back. This is David from the Personal Finance Squad. We just finished Section 3.4 Seasonal Bills, Gas and Electric Utilities, where the bills come every month but the amount will fluctuate. We use the 12-month cycle to determine how much upfront cash would be needed to put into the supplemental account, and from there ran the exercise and balanced out the budget for the year. Now we need to look a little bit deeper into a little bit more of a variable, which is estimating payments. Variable meaning monthly amount is a little bit harder to determine. And the thing that I'm speaking of is gasoline. Most people drive a car, so this is a very important thing. And this is because gas can fluctuate. We can see right here, 5 or 10 cents in a week, and sometimes it can remain stable for a long period of time. But it will move up and down on a daily basis in most gas stations. The reason for this is that India and China, their economies have become more robust. So in the late 2000s, the prices are higher than they are today. And the reason they're lower today is that countries such as the United States has been producing much more, and therefore the supplies go up and the prices go down. So what we need to do here is determine the gas mileage and the fuel tank size of the car that you're driving, or what Jasper is driving, and how many miles are driven each week, because we are going to go take this weekly cost and then fan it out for the year cycle and then see what it comes out to for a monthly cost. So a few things we should do, pretty basic information that you can find in an owner's manual or on the web, is you need to know obviously the vehicle you're driving, so I think that's pretty easy. And then the city and the highway gas mileage. Now in Jasper's case, we're going to say that his car is 17 gallons in terms of the tank size. And the gas at this point, hypothetically, going to say is $2.32 a gallon. If we take that figure and perform some basic math, 232 times 17 is $39.44, and we're going to round down because 0.44 is less than 0.5. Okay, so there's our basis. Now the next step is to determine how much is highway and how much is city, because the gas mileage is different. So we have a base chart here, and we see that in this category here, we see the miles is multiplied by 2, so that'll constitute a round trip. And you can see that we have work for him, gym, errands, family, friends, leisure activities. This is the best of his knowledge. This is going to be the best of your knowledge. It's very hard to know when you're going to go on a trip. You just need to take the foundation of what you do know on a regular basis and try to incorporate that into your plan. So we can see here for work that we have miles times 2. So if we were to do just a little quick math, we see that 12 times 2 is 24. If you multiply that by 4, that equals 96 miles. So you can see where this number comes from. And we see that there's 32 city and 64 highway. I've done a little math here, and it says here's a city miles driven are 54 and 108 for highway, for 162 for Jasper's week. So now we need to calculate the percentage, and we can see here that doing the basic math again, we see that 1/3 of his driving is city and 2/3 is for the highway. So another thing, even though the manufacturer tells you what you get for a gas mileage or what you get off a full tank's more important because you know when you're going to have to fill up. It may take 2 or 3 cycles. And a lot of newer cars, probably in the last 5 or 10 years, are going to have trip computers, so they're going to tell you what you're getting per gallon. But to know for sure, you can just keep an eye on the miles you're getting from the time you filled up, from the time that you filled up again. Further this example, based on the miles that Jasper's driving and what his tank would be, we know that he's going to get 350 miles per tank. And we can see that 350 miles divided by 17 is 20.58 a gallon. So again, we just hypothetically said that Jasper drove and knew that he was getting 350 miles per tank. The 350 we've just noted, his table is coming out to 334, because this means we're saying here it takes 2 weeks before Jasper has to fill up. So what we did is took 162 miles, which was in the table up here, from his estimation right here, and we multiply it by 2 and come up with the 334. So that way we know in the 2-week driving cycle, we estimate that he's going to drive 334 miles, but the tank needs to be filled up at 350. So this is a number we can now work with. And what that means is that we know that 2/3 of the miles on the highway and the 20.58 miles per gallon is plausible with the 1522 city. So we're saying we're in the ballpark in terms of the average miles per gallon, and because we're confident that the 334 in his trip table at the 350 fill-up point seems pretty good because of the cycles that happened 2 or 3 times his experience. So what we're saying here then is that if Jasper has a 2-week cycle to fill up, that means he needs to fill up 26 times a year, right? 52 rather, divided by 2, 26, right? So knowing that we're going to go for 26 as the number and that it's $39 per fill up, the total cost for the year is $1,014. Divide that by 12, and the average is $84.50 a month, and we're going to round up to 85. Okay, so interestingly enough, we see here that Jasper has 10 months. Well, he will require 2 fill-ups, and 2 months will require 3 fill-ups, and that's just like our bi-weekly paycheck schedule that he has. So, for example, we used a 2013 calendar based on January 4th, and any calendars are fine because today is 2016, but based on this sample, we know that in March and August will require the extra fill-up. So taking our $85 monthly average, we see that there's a $7 surplus in the regular months because $85 minus 78 equals 7. And we'll see this a little bit blown out here as I scroll down. Okay, just keep in mind that $85 is rounded, right? But what actually ends up occurring in our schedule can be different, as we can see right here. But let's go back up here real quick and do some exercises here. So we can see, like we've done with some other exercises like bowling and childcare. We see that we got a couple 2-sups, and then we find out in the 3rd month, March, because March is a bigger month. So in these months, for example, it's $85, but in March, August, 117. Consequently, in those months, these two right here, it puts the balance in a negative position. Being that March and August require more money, it's actually $32 more, and we can see that from SUP and the SUP balance as a negative 18 equals 32. Just as 32 is $28 and $4 respectively. So you can see when we're in the negative here that we have to throw cash in, of course, right? So in this case it's $18 to make it 0. So now everything's good again. Then we pile up another $28 here. And then we run at $4 short. Throw in the $4, we're back to 0. And then we get another run here of 28. Hence, at the end of the cycle, new balance in the supplemental account will be $28. So even though that we added 22 to get to 0, when we do these supplemental account exercises, that this is not going to be a one-for-one relationship. It can be pretty close, but it's just a matter of when the money comes and what's needed. And just keep in mind, we're doing this just one time. We don't need to repeat this again because the money replaces itself. But the variance can be up or down slightly as a result of timing of bills and when they come out. Not every year you're going to have a 3rd paycheck or a 3rd fill-up in March and August. Things just fluctuate. So this chart's a little more indicative, a little easier to understand. So we can see here the normal payment of 2 fill-ups a month because it's $39 a month times 2 is 78. So now we're going to carry forward what would happen again in a year through the cycle of actually starting out with the added cash right here. So again, we see the same results. It's these columns are all going to have the same activity, except in this case, we're starting out with 28 plus the 2 sump for the first month. That gives us 35 and 42. So now what happens, of course, is that there's underage of $32, but now we see there's a $10 balance because we had some money in there to take care of it. And then we get another run again of $28, and we start adding that, and it comes out to 38, so the math is correct. And then we need 32 again on the big month. That leaves 6, and then we get the last run. And then actually we end up with $34 at the end of all this. So even adding the $28 in cash lets us with 34 at the end. And that's okay. You have a surplus. There's nothing wrong with a surplus. I mean, if this is sitting at a couple $100s or something, you might go, wait a minute. But especially in the case of gasoline, it does fluctuate a lot. So having a little extra dollars around in your piggy bank, if you will, is not a bad thing. And this is exactly what I want to show right here. There's a gas website called Gas Buddy, and they run charts, historical charts, to show the gas prices. And so we can see, for example, the widely dichotomy of prices can be quite large. So for example, we can see $1 difference can actually happen in a year from the gas price. So look at 2008. We see that there's an actual fluctuation of $2.51 that year. So a $4.12 high price is an average across the United States. So where you live certainly could be different. In California, it probably was over $5. Your budget has to be based on where you live, and you have to understand the nature of what the prices are. But this is a huge range. So obviously this is a trending up in the chart if you were to look at a graph. And then you can see here that the swing was 90 cents, and this was much more stable in 2009. And think about this. This is when the economy was really bad. So at some point, some people were paying $4.12 or the $5 and the high places and having to deal with a lot of job loss. So that could have been a very stressful time. Again, you can see 2010. Now we have a very small variance of only 29 cents. Stability like this at a decent price is certainly what everybody would like, but that's just not the way it works. And then from 320 to 392, 72 cents. So it goes across the board. So we have a range here that we had a fluctuation over a course of a year cycle from 29 to $2.51. Now we have a more recent chart here, and you can see the difference. This is like a flip around. Now we don't have a grid here, but you can see here in 2014, $3.29. Then you can see it dipped all the way to 201. And then it had a high point somewhere in here. It looks about $2.70, or almost $2.81, somewhere in there. 201. So you can start seeing, again, there's a pattern. So the patterns that happen seem to happen for a good stretch of time. So you just got to kind of, again, pay attention to what's going on around here. And then you see all the way down here, this looks really nice. $1.69. And then this was taken as of the 5th of April, 2016. And as we see 201. So the important thing you need to do is to listen to the news, read articles. So there's enough information out there for you to have a good understanding of what the trend seems to be like. So going through some of this dialogue here, I tend to say when you do a projection, you might want to go 25 cents or whatever's comfortable with you, but I like to do that and say, listen, if the price is $2.31 where I'm at and I'm going to put in 25 more cents, obviously my supplemental account's going to be beefing up as long as my miles stay the same. And eventually you're going to need that money. So I think, you'd rather go higher than go lower, because if you go lower, you're eventually going to get burned and you're not going to have enough money in your account to pay for the fluctuations. You don't want to get into that negative balance supplemental account so that you can't pay, because then again you have to draw it from other places. So we're going to get to our chapter review here in our next video, but I would like to say that make sure that with your gasoline exercise here that You should maintain this one regularly. And the reason being is that there's many variables that determine the amount of miles that you're driving. You could go on trips you didn't think you were going to go on or know you were going to go on. You might have a job change. Maybe you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend that wasn't in the picture. I mean, there's so many other things. So because there's so many changes, you might have to just put money in or take money out, or more so increase the monthly expense amount put in to pay bills, and then which would pad your supplemental. So again, give it some good look-see. Make sure you do it right. It doesn't hurt to have a few extra dollars in there. It's not going to kill your budget, because either way, you're still going to have to pay for the gas anyway. You just, again, you want to have the money there and not have it spent somewhere else. So thanks for sticking with me on this one. And we are now to the conclusion of Chapter 3. So I will see you in the next video, and thanks for joining.